So I emigrated with just 2 suitcases with my personal belonging and books and records. For some reason I was taking some records and my mother portrait. That's all that I have.
So did you bring your mother over here eventually?
Yes, a year later, yes. I worked.
What year was that?
75. She came in, I believe, November, I think, 75. So all this time, not all this time, at least, so I came in November 74, and I was working like cleaning apartment, taking care of old people, whatever they pay me. Most of the time I was getting like $3 an hour, but whatever I could make, I was sending her to pay off my debts, to get some money to come here. And eventually she came and she brought my aunt also. So that was, so she came in 75. And
When did her aunt come? Your aunt come?
together with her.
75.
Yeah. I had an aunt. She is the only from all sisters that didn't have any children.
What was her name, that aunt?
Rosa, R-O-S-A.
Same last name?
No, her name is Chorna, C-H-O-R-N-A, Chorna, and this Chorna is my mother's maiden name.
And what was her husband's name? Do you remember, your uncle who went to?
Yes, Philip, but I don't know his last name.
And then you had another aunt who had?
Yes, I had another 2 aunts.
What were their names?
One was Tatiana or Tanya. She was in concentration camp with us, with her daughter. And then they lived, my grandmother and my aunt Rosa and my aunt Tanya moved to a small town called Pervomaisk. It's in Ukraine. The reason that they moved, because my 4th aunt, her name is Eva, E-V-A, Eva. She was not in concentration camp. She managed to be evacuated, and with 2 sons, she had 2 sons, and her husband was in army. Also, he was also Russian, and he was wounded during the war, but he survived. And then they settled in this Pervomaisk. So all the family, my 2 aunts, one with the child, and that aunt who had 2 sons, they all settled in Pervomaisk.
And their sons are your cousins. Do you remember their names?
Sure. One was Valentine. He was born in 1940, and he died pretty young. But the other, Anatoly, I was with him the friendliest, because he was in Odessa when we lived in the basement. He entered the college, and he lived with us for, I don't know, 4 years of college. And I was on a very good term with him. Actually, I invited him to America 3 times, and unfortunately he passed away a year ago, just a year ago. You see, he is half Jewish. His wife is not Jewish, he is Ukrainian, so is his son, his daughter-in-law, whatever. But I convinced them to go to Israel a long time ago. It was about 12 years ago. So I arranged, so they went to Israel, and they stayed there 2 years. He had a weak heart, so they performed a heart surgery on him. He said he would die in that little town of Pervomaisk, but then something didn't work out, and they all came back to Pervomaisk. And as I said, a year ago he died. So, and my cousin, the aunt who was with us in concentration camp, so her daughter got married being in Pervomaisk, and then they went to Krivoy Rog. I don't know if you've heard about Krivoy Rog, is close to Donbass, where all these events take place now, all this war. And so,
In the eastern part of Ukraine.
yes, eastern part of Ukraine. So my aunt died a long time ago, probably about 20 years ago, and her daughter, my cousin, died about 3 years ago. So now the only who I have, my cousin who lives in Ukraine, in Nikolaev, and I hardly know him. I saw him a couple of times. He is the son of one of my uncles who I've never seen, who was killed. So this is the only cousin I have. Nothing else, no, nobody else.
And you said your mother was very pious, very religious, and then she had children. Did your aunts and did everyone marry a Jew? So all the kids were Jewish, 100%, or was it
No.
mixed marriages?
My aunt who went to Krivoy Rog, where the cousin, she was married to a Jewish guy. My aunt who lived in Pervomaisk, and she herself was married to Russian, not even Russian, he was Belarusian. Two sons that I was talking about, they were half Jewish and married to Russian, to Ukrainian girls. And I myself, my first husband was Russian, Greek actually, three-quarter Greek, one part Russian. And my second husband, who is the father of my daughter, was Jewish. So my daughter is pure Jewish, married to a Jew.
What do you remember about your grandmother?
Oh God, I remember my grandmother spoke mostly Yiddish. And between them, like she and the three daughters, my mother and two other sisters, there was a fourth sister, but she was away. She was married. She was evacuated. She was not concentration camp. And there were, I'm sorry to interrupt myself, and there were two brothers. My grandmother had 6 children. Two brothers, my mother's brothers, were taken to the army and they got killed there, both of them. So, for sure, I've never seen them. But my grandmother, she was very old, very typical, you know what they call babushka, and that I will try to find her photo. And she was very affectionate, speaking to me Yiddish. I still understand Yiddish. I don't have it active. I couldn't say a word. But when we lived here in New Jersey, and my mother lived in Brooklyn when she came, and when the Yiddish theater was coming here once a year, I always was buying tickets for my mother. It was such a joy for her. You probably heard about Shalom Aleichem. You know, all his stories, it's mostly about small village, or in Yiddish it's called shtetl. So it was Yiddish mixed with Russian, Ukrainian words. And it was so dear to my mother. I could understand everything. If my husband or my daughter would go with me, they would need translation. But my grandmother was talking to me Yiddish, and she was very religious. So was my mother, very religious. I'm not religious, unfortunately. When I say unfortunately, because I believe that religion gives you some comfort. It's very important to believe into something. I still believe you cannot call it Jewish God or Russian or whatever. I believe somebody or something that created all of us. I don't think that you can create a small flower without some force there. But my mother was very religious, and she believed that God saved us all. She spoke to God in her prayer like in Fiddler on the Roof, when he spoke to God, like to your friend. That's how she was with God. When I brought her to America, her and my aunt, the other sister, so my mother always was observing all holidays, always go to synagogue, and she was known by how much she helped other people. She was incredible. She lived alone after my aunt died, and always cooking, baking, giving to all neighbors, everything. I was giving her a lot of clothing, and I say, Mom, don't keep. I'm not keeping. I have to give. You know, that person just came from Russia. They are poor. There's always giving, and very, very strong. That's why she lived till age of 93 and a half. And I still believe that nobody knows whose time comes, why and what. But being so small, going through what she went through, she didn't have any chronic diseases. Heart was weak, like at that age or whatever. But one day she fell. She lived alone. She fell and she broke her hip. Broke her hip, and they took her to hospital for poor. And I believe that whatever they did, because she was recovering pretty nicely, and then she developed some clot in her leg, and eventually she passed away. But it took altogether, it took just 2 months. She never was burdened for anybody, and she went like she lived quiet without bothering anybody.
So Emily, what do you remember about your grandmother? How often would you see her? When you did, what would you, I mean...
How often? I feel like when I was younger, we used to go there a lot. I remember her apartment clear as day. Just, I can be transported back to it so quickly, on Brighton Beach. And when I was younger, I remember going to the beach with her because she lived right on the beach, and it was so fun. I just remember like when we would go to see her and she would open the door and she was so teeny weeny and adorable, and she would always just be so happy to see us, and just would welcome us with open arms and a huge meal, and it was just really so sweet, and just felt really good to be there with her.
Emily was the most favorite creature in this life for her. She called her Lubenka. Lubenka, I even don't know how to translate it in English. Lubenka is such a term of endearment that you cannot even compare. Do you know when I was pregnant, I'm sorry to interrupt, when I was pregnant with Emily, she was sitting, my friends still remember, she was sitting and kissing my feet. No, my Lubenkas.
And I would call her a few times a week to just check in, but my Russian was so bad that like our conversation was very short. But it was always like, what did you eat today? And I would give her a rundown. Sometimes I'd pick it up just because I didn't know how to say that many words after a while. So I was like, I had pasta or something like that. But
she didn't speak English?
She didn't speak English, no.
And for her, like for Italian, you know her Italian, eat, mangia, eat. What did you eat? That's why when I asked
Well, now
Emily,
you do that to me.
I do it.
But sometimes I make things up.
Emily, what did
Get
you
off my
eat?
back. I love you, but I do.
But you know, they live in New York. They have food delivered, dinner delivered.
Did your grandmother have special dishes that she cooked that you were just to die for?
She cooked to this day. She cooked the best fried potatoes in the world.
Yes.
I remember when she would stay with us, I would come home from school and she would make them. It was the most delicious thing in the world. Like, to this day, I've never had anything like her fried potatoes. They're żarne kartoshka in Russian.
Yeah, she's right.
Oh, and it was the best.
Home fried potatoes.
And it's just, she was such a good cook, and I have no idea how to cook.
I know how to cook. We spoke about this before. I know how to cook. I just don't like everyday cooking.
Yeah.
That's why my husband appreciates, and Emily doesn't like to cook at all.
I think I've cooked for my husband once, and he still married me. So
Just once?
just one. He's only cooked for me once, so we're even. We even, right?
Even before the baby, it has nothing to do
Oh,
with
it's nothing to do with the baby.
Did your grandmother ever meet anybody over here?
If she
Oh,
was
like a
what?
boyfriend?
Yeah.
She had, I know she had a
No,
boyfriend. Remember she had that?
She knew Andrew.
No, Babushka had a boyfriend.
Ah, yes, yes. My
Remember she did
mother
that guy.
could remarry. She had a few chances to remarry, but she was so proud. I dedicated all my life to my children, and I don't want to marry somebody who maybe won't treat them the right way. And she was so proud that that practically she didn't have any personal life. And when we lived in Russia with her, there was no phone, and she didn't know if after work, if let's say I would go with friends and she wouldn't know. She instilled in me the guilty feeling. You know, Jews known by that, feeling guilty, but I felt double, triple guilty. That, she always was telling me, I gave you all my life. And she was telling me, Emily is all your life. I said, I love her dearly. She is the most important part of my life. But I still have my job, I have my husband.
That's how it should be.
It's all pieces of life. No, she was proud that she gave her life to her children. That's all. Look at you.
Did you ever talk to her about, well, I guess it was all in Russian, so it was difficult, besides food and family, did you ever get into current events with her, or did she ever talk about her time back in Russia and Ukraine?
No, not so.
About concentration camps
Yeah.
sometimes.
I'm trying to think. Yeah, I mean, I think with all of us when we were there, she would talk about it, and I knew her stories, and a lot of it through you. You would tell me about her. But yeah, no, I mean, her story is just incredible. Knowing her, and it's like when you see, she was just a small woman, but she's the strongest woman, like physically and emotionally, like mentally strong. I mean, I remember once, I'll never forget. I had a backache or something. I was like a teenager, and I needed a massage. She's like, I'll give you a massage. It was so painful because she's so strong. I was like, you're such a small woman and you're so strong. It was insane. But yeah.
Did she have a lot of friends in Brighton Beach?
Oh yeah.
Oh, people loved her. People loved her.
I told Vincent how she was cooking, baking, giving to everybody.
Just everyone loved her. Even when she died in the hospital, like everybody in the hospital, like loved her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always, all the nurses, everybody. So many people came to her funeral. But speaking about my mother, how strong she was when we settled in the basement, and as I mentioned, nothing, no heating, no water, nothing. We had to bring water downstairs, bring any dirty water upstairs, and heating. My mother, being so little as she was chopping wood, bringing coal, and that's how we lived. Yeah, extremely strong woman, and I want to believe that I'm part as strong as she was, because I came here all alone to America. I couldn't even come with my mother because I didn't have enough money to pay for my visa, and at that time you had to pay, we had to pay for the fact that they take away your citizenship. This was the last insult. They take away your citizenship, you have to pay for it. You got education there, you have to pay for it. And not talking about tickets to Vienna, all that. And for sure I didn't have money for that. I was a poor engineer. I graduated from university, Odessa University, math and computer science, but my salary was so low that we barely could make ends meet, and for sure I didn't have money to pay. So I borrowed money and I left my mother as a hostage for those. So I emigrated with just 2 suitcases with my personal belonging, and books and records. For some reason, I was taking some records.